Okay, again, Quotient of Powers. I'm not going to drag my heels because you can back up and rewatch. This is if you are struggling and you cannot do this on your own. Otherwise, do it on your own and check it with the sub. And then if you're having problems, come back and watch. So, the numerical part of a quotient, which is a fraction, the numerical part, you just simplify that. And if you can't simplify that on your own, then you can plug that part into your calculator. That's the only part that can go in your calculator. The variables cannot. If you plug in this problem in your calculator, you're going to get 0 for the answer. The calculator is not designed to simplify a problem with variables in it. It just isn't. So, -3 over -3 gives me a positive 1. X squared over x cubed. When you divide like bases, you subtract the exponents, and you always want to subtract the smallest from the largest. So if I subtract 2 from 3, sorry, I wrote a 3, then I have in my denominator x to the first. Remember on the graphic organizer in the notes, I said if everything leaves the numerator, then you have an understood 1. Technically, what really happened here is I ended up with 1x squared over 1x cubed. And so when you bring that x squared down and subtract it, the 1 is still there, just so you don't get confused about that. Number 2, I've got -4p to the 4th over p. There's nothing to simplify with the 4. It's the only number in the problem. So I'm going to have a -4 in my numerator. You're going to subtract your exponents. 4 is bigger than 1, so this is going to come up here and you're going to subtract it. And p to the 4 minus 1 gives me p to the 3rd. And if everything leaves the denominator, you do not have to write this as a fraction. But if it makes your little heart happy because you started with a fraction and you need to end with a fraction, you can put a 1 in the denominator. Again, this part is not necessary. Not necessary for you to do that 1 in the denominator, but you can if you really feel like you have to. For number 3, I've got -4x cubed over x. Again, there's nothing to simplify with that 4. There's a negative out front, so it's going to remain there. X to the cubed over x to the first, you're going to subtract the 1 from the 3. That's going to give you an x squared in your numerator. The denominator goes away or becomes 1. You do not have to put the 1 in the denominator. Number 4, I've got 4 over 3. Simplify that fraction if you can. 4/3 is already simplified as far as it's going to go. So you know you're going to have those things there. P to the 4th over p to the 4th. You can look at this a couple of ways. Anytime you have something over itself, like 5 over 5 is 1 and 2 over 2 is 1, it simplifies because a fraction means that you're dividing. So if I do p to the 4th divided by p to the 4th, I'm going to just get 1. And so that would leave me with that, which is going to be just 4/3. Or if you jump ahead to that zero product property, that zero exponent property, and you have this, because if I come up here and subtract that, 4 minus 4 is 0, and anything to the 0 power is 1. And so I just have 4/3. You're going to learn, the more comfortable you get with these properties, and the more you remember them because you've already been taught them, you're going to learn how to see things. Everybody's going to do it different if there's more than one way possible. We're not going to all jump out there and see exactly the same way. So that's one that you can do a couple of different ways. Number 5, 3 over -2 will not simplify. So that gives me, it doesn't matter where the negative goes. I went ahead and wrote it out front. If you put it in the numerator, if you put it in the denominator, either way you're going to have a positive divided by a negative or a negative divided by a positive, and you're going to end up with a negative answer. So now I'm going to deal with my variables. I'm going to subtract the 2 from the 4 because 4 is bigger for the x's. So 4 minus 2 gives me x squared. And y cubed over y squared, I'm going to subtract the 2 from the 3. And 3 minus 2 is 1. And that's my answer. For number 6, 3 over negative 2, simplified. There's nothing I can do with that. If you don't believe me, put in 3 over negative 2 as a fraction on your calculator, and it's going to give the same thing I just wrote down. I'm going to subtract x to the first from x to the fourth. Since x to the fourth is in the denominator, x cubed is going to be in the denominator. You're going to always subtract where the bigger number is. So I'm going to subtract y to the fourth minus y to the first, and that's going to give me y to the third in my denominator. Number 7, I've got 2n squared over 2mn. Well, that's what I just was talking about a second ago. 2 over 2, 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I'm going to do the technical thing here. I've got 1n squared over 1mn. So now I've got those n squared and n. So I'm going to subtract the n to the first from the n squared, and I'm going to have 1n over 1m. But we all know that the 1 as a coefficient is not necessary, and I can just write my answer this way. I'm not saying you can't put the 1, I'm saying it isn't necessary. Both of these answers would be correct. Okay? Number 8, last one. I've got negative 2 fourths. Negative 2 fourths will simplify to negative 1/2. I've got m cubed over m to the first, so I'm going to subtract 3 minus 1. Gives me m squared. N squared over n, I'm going to subtract n squared, 2 minus 1, so that's going to give me n to the first, or just, I'm sorry, you can't see that, or just n on the top. Okay. Slow it down, back it up, pause it, watch it again, whatever you need to do.